Oh, thank you. I love that you're looking at this cultural moment and Jesus and the kingdom and all that means, because that's so relevant today, because our cultural moment at the moment is an interesting one. There's so much that's going on. And actually the story that I'm going to talk about tonight is really, really relevant. And I'll explain that a little bit more. So I am from Restored, and I feel like I don't even need to do my next slide, which is about our mission, because you delivered it so beautifully. Thank you, Emily. But we're an organisation speaking up about violence against women and girls. Like, we want a world where men don't live in violence, fear of violence either, but we're particularly focused on women, recognising that for centuries and, truthfully, millennia, they have faced a particular type of violence that's been overlooked, pushed to one side, shoved under the carpet, and ignored. And actually, it is time that we spoke out. It's time that we did something. And that speak up and do something comes from that story in Judges 19, which I'm not talking on tonight, so you'll have to get me back if you want that one. But I am going to talk about another story that actually has similar themes. And I want us to think about, actually, where do we fit in this story? And what does it mean for us? What can we learn? Because as Emily said, the Bible is full of these tough, gritty stories that we often don't talk about. You don't find them in children's Bibles, and that's totally appropriate. We shouldn't find them in children's Bibles. They'd need taking away and locking up in a box. And we don't often hear them preached about. They don't appear in the Book of Common Lectionary, which is the book that the Church of England, some of the Church of England used to follow through one year after the next, and it goes through really key passages. But these ones aren't in there. But these passages matter. They're not in there by accident. Some people refer to them as tales of terror, and they are, trigger warning for what's coming up. We're going to be talking about sexual violence a little bit. But because those stories are in there, it shows us that the Bible is relevant to our cultural moment. Because we live in a world where 97% of young women aged 18 to 24, will be sexually harassed. Not might be, or could be, but will be. Ofsted did a report 4 years ago now that said that we have a rape culture in our secondary schools. That means that it's so normal to be sexually assaulted. It's so normal to be sexually harassed that nobody really bats an eyelid anymore. So that's our cultural moment. And if we hold on to that a little bit on one side and go, okay, I'm going to bear that in mind, as we look at this story, as we think about justice, as we think about safeguarding, thinking about safeguarding. I bet none of you came out tonight because you're like, woohoo, safeguarding Sunday. Let's get cracking. But actually, this stuff does matter, and I'll circle back to that before the end. But as we think about the kingdom and justice, there's lots of directions I could go in, because justice is so key to the Christian faith. It sits at the heart of who God is. But I want to kind of hang the rest of what I'm talking about on a concept of justice to get us going. So if we go back to the Old Testament, so the part of the Bible that was written before Jesus came along, and to the book of Jeremiah, which is a book, Jeremiah was a prophet, and what that means is that he was somebody who was really good at hearing from God and excellent at passing on the message. And lots of that got recorded. And this is one of the things he said when he was referring to God. He said, "Do justice and righteousness, and deliver from the hand of the oppressor him who's been robbed. And do no wrong or violence to the resident alien." That's not little green men. That's strangers living among you, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, "the fatherless and the widow, nor shed innocent blood in his place." And fundamentally, this is about how do we take care of those on the edges of society? How do we take care of those who other people don't take care of? How do we protect the weak? How do we look after the lost and the least and the last? But there's something at the beginning of that sentence that's really important to notice. Do justice and righteousness. Those two words are really tightly connected, justice and righteousness. So you read the Bible, you'll notice them together again and again and again. But justice sometimes we think of as a concept. We want justice when it means that bad things happen to people who've hurt us. We want justice when it means we get what we think we deserve. And we see it as a concept. But in this verse, it's very clearly a verb. It's something that we do. And as we think about that, That's what I want you to have in your head as we go through the rest of this evening. That's what I want you to think about, is what does justice look like when I'm doing it? How do I do it? How do I not just have it as something that I want to be present around me? How do I get in? Because here's the thing. Justice needs us all. Safeguarding needs us all. But justice needs us all. We all have a place to play, a part to play in this story as we think about justice and the kingdom of God and how we see God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. So to help us to think this through, I'm going to go to another story, a story from the Old Testament long before Jesus was born and walked on earth as God made man, a story in the life of King David. And David was one of the very first kings of Israel. And this story is picked up quite a way into his reign. And I do want to warn you that this story does contain some sexual violence. So if you're somebody, and let's bear in mind those statistics I gave at the beginning, there will be people in this room for whom this is close to home. And if this is something that's hard to hear, you're allowed to stick your fingers in your ears, you're allowed to just zone out, you're allowed to, in fact, sometimes what's quite a good idea if you can feel yourself feeling a bit triggered is just to do some breaths in and bigger breaths out, or to tap a little bit. That can be quite surreptitious, no one knows you're doing it. But actually that focus of focusing on tapping your leg or tapping your arm and thinking about that can help to ground your body. So we'll do that. But let me read this story to you. It's a little bit long, so bear with. But as we think through, I want you to think about how we do justice. I want you to think about how we change this story and how do we get to a different ending. So, picking it up, if you've got Bibles with you and like to follow along, it's in the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 13. But it will be up on the screen. So, in the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. You may have noticed, it's actually his own sister. It's a half-sister, but it is his sister. Amnon became so obsessed with his sister Tamar that he made himself ill. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Now Amnon had an advisor named Jonadab, son of Shimea, David's brother. Jonadab was a very shrewd man, and he asked Amnon, "Why do you, the king's son, look so haggard morning after morning? Won't you tell me?" And Amnon said to him, "I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." Keeps removing her to make it okay. "Go to bed and pretend to be ill," Jonadab said. "When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'I'd like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare the food in my sight so I may watch her and then eat it from her hand.'" So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. When the king came to see him, Amnon said to him, "I would like my sister Tamar to come and make some special bread in my sight so I may eat from her hand." So David, his dad, sent word to Tamar at the palace, "Go to the house of your brother Amnon and prepare some food for him." So Tamar went to the house of her brother Amnon, who was lying down. She took some dough, kneaded it, made the bread in his sight, and baked it. And then she took the pan and served him the bread that he refused to eat. "Send everyone out of here," Amnon said. So everyone left him. And then Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food here into my bedroom so I may eat from your hand." And Tamar took the bread she'd prepared and brought it to her brother Amnon in his bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, "Come to bed with me, sister." "No, my brother," she said to him, "don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing. What about me? Where would I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You'd be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please speak to the king. He won't keep me from being married to you." But he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he raped her. Then Amnon hated her with an intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. Amnon said to her, "Get up and get out." "No," she said to him, "sending me away would be a greater wrong than what you've already done to me." But he refused to listen to her. So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing an ornate robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters of the king wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornate robe she was wearing. She put her hands on her head and went away weeping aloud as she went. Her brother Absalom said to her, "Has that Amnon, your brother, been with you?" "Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." And Tamar lived in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. When King David heard all of this, he was furious. And Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he disgraced his sister Tamar. I'm going to jump forward a little bit to 2 years later. Absalom ordered his men, "Listen, when Amnon is in high spirits from drinking wine, and I say to you, 'Strike Amnon down,' then kill him. Don't be afraid. Haven't I given you this order? Be strong and brave." And the king's sons came in wailing loudly. The king too, and all his attendants wept very bitterly. It's quite a story. Don't know how many of you have heard that preached from a pulpit before. It's a horrible story. It's a horrible story of a broken family with terrible relationships, of power used and abused. And it's easy to just skim past and get onto something an awful lot nicer. But these stories are in the Bible. And they're in the Bible because they matter. They're in the Bible because it shows, like Emily said, that actually God sees this stuff. He sees the world in all of its brokenness, in all of its mess. He sees, he knows, and critically, he cares. This story might be triggering for some of us. But what it also says is God sees you. He knows. He cares. He doesn't sweep things under carpets. He loves you, and he wants restoration for you, and it's really important that you hear that. But as we look at this story, I want us to stop and to notice the different characters, because justice needs us all. Everybody in this story played a part in one way or another. And I want you to think about, we're going to look at the characters one by one. And I want you to think, which of these characters actually do I recognize in me? Which of these characters do I need to learn something from? Which of these characters speak to me and challenge me and call me out? And at the end, we'll think about what that means for us. But I want to start with Tamar, because Tamar is the one who was done to. Tamar's the tragedy at the center of the story. A woman whose life is taken up and just controlled by the men in her life, frankly. She's the one who's been harmed. And we live in a world where so often we rush to look at the perpetrator. You know, if you think about all the crime documentaries and even all the crime dramas, it's always, we're fascinated by the killer. We're fascinated by the perpetrator because we want to understand and we want to see them get caught out. And so often we overlook the victim. So often they're just a bit of the story that lets us get to the juicy bit. Because we want to understand what made him like made the perpetrator like they really are. We want to get to it. We want to see. We want the gory details. And we forget to center the victim. So I want to start with Tamar because her story matters. And there are some things that we notice that are good to remember when we choose to center victims in the future. So the first thing that we know about Tamar is that she's just been totally objectified. The Bible tells us Amnon became obsessed with her. Now, he thinks in his head that he's in love. We'll get to that in a minute. But he's obsessed with her. He wants her. He knows that she's got something that he wants, and he will do anything to get it. She's not a person anymore. None of that matters. What matters is what he can take from her, what she can give him. She's just become a thing and not a person. She's deceived. She's part of a great big con. She's been pulled in, hoodwinked, gaslit into being in a space where she can be overpowered. She tried to raise her voice. She tried to say no. She tried to bargain and negotiate and find a way through. And there's that passage in there that some of you might still be hung up on and going, Dad will let me marry you. Right? That's weird. And I know that. But that was her trying to find a way of making it a little bit better than what was obviously about to happen. It was better than being a woman who somebody's had sex with and then thrown out in a society where that meant she was untouchable. Anything was better than that. And then she's overpowered. Like, this is a story of abuse of power at the most basic of levels. He was a man and she was a woman, so he's got more power than her in the first place just by status. And physically, he's stronger than her. Physically, he can take what she wants. Physically, she's out of control. She has no choice when it boils down to it, and it comes to it. And then she's shamed. He hated her more than he'd loved her. So often, this is the reality for people who've been harmed. They're the object of somebody's desire, but then when it comes to it, they're just a reminder of something bad that they've done. So on top of the rape, on top of the overpowering, on top of making her out of control, now she's showered with shame. Look at you, you're disgusting, get away from me. Words that will ring in her ears, words that will start to form her identity if she's not careful going forwards, words that will begin to make her feel differently, frightened, nervous to look at anybody ever again. Get out of here. And then, when she goes to her other brother, Absalom, and it's so clear what has happened, his response to her is, be quiet, he's your brother. Don't take this thing to heart. Don't make such a fuss. Oh, there, it'll all be better. And it's minimized. And it's so tempting to do this, actually, when we hear stories like this. If somebody comes to us and tells us something terrible has happened to them, we don't want it to be true. And that's a psychological thing, because we feel much more comfortable and much happier and much safer in a world where bad things don't happen. Definitely in a world where bad things don't happen to us or the people we love. And so the natural psychological response to somebody telling us a story like this is, it can't be that bad. No, surely it's not as bad as all of that. Like, it's this gut instinct response to make it smaller, to make it okay, so that the world is a safer place for us to live in. But this story tells us that when somebody comes to us, like Tamar went to Absalom, we need to listen. We don't need to decide how serious it is. That's not our job. Our job is to be there, to listen, and to love. But there's something else very important about Tamar that I want us to notice, because she's not just somebody who is done to. She's phenomenally brave. Because she tells her story. Now, she doesn't tell her story in the way that we would nowadays. She doesn't write a blog or go to the newspapers. What she does is put ashes on her head and tear her robe, and she wails. And in the culture that she lived in, that said everything. She ripped the garment that virgin daughters wore. She put the ashes on her head, which said, I might as well be dead. I grieve, I'm grieving, I'm in mourning. And she tells her story. It is so phenomenally brave to tell your story. And I want you to hear that too. Because she isn't just a victim. She's powerful. And she uses her voice. And when people use their voice, we need to give them the credit that they're due. So that is Tamar. And then there's Amnon, the villain of the story. Now, here's a character that hopefully most of you are sat there going, well, I'm nothing like Amnon. I would never do that to my sister. I wouldn't dream of it. But there are still some things that we need to learn from Amnon. And the first is, he did imagine himself in love. Like, fundamentally, he fancied his sister and he wanted her. But in his head, that obsession, that lust, that desire to get it away with her, he rewrote the narrative. He called it something else. He might even have believed that obsession. He'd got into a place where he's like, I just need her. I love her so much. He didn't love her at all. Love doesn't look like that. Love doesn't behave like that. He was obsessed. Let's be honest with ourselves when we're out and about. Let's be honest with ourselves when we see somebody that we fancy, that we find attractive. Let's be honest with ourselves about what we want. And let's be really clear at the difference between physical attraction and love, kingdom love, Jesus love. It's very, very different. And he abuses that power. I've said it already. He abuses the power that he has. He has so power to send the servants away, power to call her in, power to get his dad to give him a favor, power to get her to come and bake bread for him. I don't think I could get, actually I probably could get, I've got daughters and they're quite nice. They probably would bake bread for one another, but it would be a bit of a push as they'd have something better to do. But he can demand these things and he gets them. And he uses all of that power to get what he wants. Like, we've all got power. I could do a whole sermon on this and I'm not going to. But we've all got power. Some of us feel like we haven't got very much, but we all do. Things we say, the things we do, the things we don't say, the things we don't do. And we get to choose what to do with that. Do we use it as a force for good? Power's not bad in and of itself. How we use our power is everything. And Amnon chooses to use all of that power to make sure he gets what he wants. That's abuse. And then he projects, because he knows that what he's done is wrong. He knows, he truthfully loathes himself, but it's far easier to loathe Tamar. And so he projects all of that feeling about himself, all of the feeling about what's just happened, and he puts it on her. He doesn't take accountability. He doesn't take responsibility. He doesn't own what he's just done. He makes it her fault. He makes it her problem for her to carry and to take away. And there's a lesson to be learnt there about us. When we do something wrong, and it doesn't need to be anything like on this scale, how good are we at owning it? Or is it easier to make it somebody else's fault? Somebody else's problem? Well, if I'd have been raised differently, if they hadn't have said this, if they hadn't have looked at me like that, if they hadn't have worn that thing, if they hadn't, and it's not straightforward or easy. It is straightforward, actually. Let's own it when we get things wrong. Own it, apologize, move on. Make amends where necessary. But own it. Don't cast it onto other people. And then there's Jonadab. And I can only describe Jonadab as a weasel, right? He's a weasel. He's one of those kids in school who would have sidled up to the cool kid and done anything to be in his good books, isn't he? Like, he's the kid who'd gone, oh no, anything you want, sir, I'll get you the football. You kick it because you're the best. Like, that's him. He comes along and goes, you don't look great. What's the problem? And when he hears the problem, his response is, I have a plan. Why don't you? And he colludes with Amnon to help him get what he wants. He's as complicit as Amnon in this. It's his plan that Amnon carries out. Jonadab, in his determination to be in the in crowd, to be in with the coolest prince, literally, doesn't challenge him, doesn't point out the error of his ways, but instead goes, I'll help you. I'll help you. Makes you think of some of the stories in the news about Epstein, about Trump. You wonder how many people in those circles enabled, colluded, came up with plans to harm and hurt those women. There's another character in this story who only gets a brief mention, King David. One of the things we need to know about King David, and if you're not used to church or Christianity or the Bible, King David is quite a character in the Bible. Like, he features a lot. He wrote masses of the Psalms that we heard from earlier on. He was called a king after God's own heart. Like, he is somebody who is literally famous for being brilliant and loving God. But in this story, not doing such a good job of following him. There's something that you need to know about the story before this story in the Bible. And it's a story where David, after years and years of faithful service, years and years of putting his trust and his hope and his life, that points, in God's hands, really goes astray. It's a story where actually he sees a woman that he really wants, and he takes her. And the story unfolds into this absolute melodrama of then murdering this woman's husband, having a baby with her that dies. And it's a huge, and another story for another time, but it's insignificant that it's the story before this one. Because he set a really terrible precedent for his kids. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone knew what had gone on with Bathsheba. Everyone knew what David did. So he's set the culture for his people. He set the culture for his family. And when it comes to this story, he's ineffective. Like, we can let him off perhaps getting his daughter to go and make the bread, because for all accounts, I couldn't believe he imagined what Amnon wanted to happen next. But it says that when he hears what happened, he was furious. Furious. Oh, righteous anger. But he does absolutely nothing. Nothing. Dad does not step in. Dad does not sort it out. Dad doesn't decide this is a teaching moment for the family and he must restore taste. Like, there's nothing. He does nothing. Probably because he's thinking, oh my gosh, who am I to speak? Probably because he's thinking, well, no one's going to listen to me anymore. It's so difficult. But even the king, the man with the most power in the story, does nothing. And then there's the last brother, Absalom, who covers up and minimizes. Shh, don't make such a fuss. Don't worry about it. Leave it with me. He lets her live in his house. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. But he doesn't listen. He doesn't amplify her voice. He doesn't give her choice in what should happen next. This terrible thing has happened, Tamar. What would you like to see happen next? What will begin to make this better for you? There's none of that. Instead, he just bides his time and eventually murders his brother. Wonder what Tamar actually wanted. We'll never know. It probably wasn't for the family melodrama to just escalate and escalate and escalate. It probably wasn't for Absalom to take it all into his own hands and go, I'll sort it out like men do. And yet it's tempting, isn't it? To be like King David and like Absalom, so consumed by anger, but not to think wisely about next steps. And there's one last group in this group who very easy to lose and ignore. And that's the servants in the household. Now here's the thing, they're the people with the least power in the whole story. Very, very little. But there are some areas where maybe they could have made a difference, because they will have overheard all of these conversations. They'll know what was going on. And they had very little power. But they scurried out when Amnon sent them away. They didn't warn Tamar on her way in. They are complicit in pushing her out of the bedroom when Amnon's had his fill and bolting the door behind her, leaving her desolate outside. None of them come alongside her and say, look, let's get you somewhere safe. They have a role as well. As powerless as they were, maybe there was something a little more they could have done. I wonder where you find yourself in the story. I wonder, actually, I think sometimes the servants are the ones that it's easiest to feel that we understand them, because we have seen stuff going on and we haven't got involved. We've scurried on past because we didn't really know what to do. We didn't know how to get involved. We didn't know how to help. And we didn't call for help. And we didn't go back and check somebody was okay. And maybe we should have. Because it's hard. It's easy for me to stand here and say all of this, but it's hard in person. It's hard when it's real. It's hard when it's in your face. But how could we change this story? And I'm going to whistle through this really quickly. But there are some moments in this story when everything could have changed. Everything could have changed. What if Amnon, right, had chosen to go out for a run? He'd gone, do you know what? I'm thinking about my sister too much. Time to go out for a long, long run until my body chills out. What if? What if he lived in a culture which just made it really clear that's the thing to do when your body's betraying you? What if he'd seen his sister as an equal or even just a person? There's a point in our training when Ollie, one of the guys who speaks one of our training, he says, you don't abuse people you respect, and you don't respect people you abuse. There's something in here that matters about how we choose to see those around us. What if Jonadab had just gone, mate, she's your sister? It wouldn't have been a very big deal to call that out, would it? Not if he'd have just made a bit of a joke, mate, don't go there. There's that woman over there. You know, she's been after you for it. Like, whatever it was. But mate, she's your sister, don't. What a different story we might have had. What if David, after the story of Bathsheba, had fully taken his sons aside and gone, right, you've seen what I've done, and the royal mess that came out of it, literally. Don't do what I've done. And who made sure that he went after them, keeping an eye on them, watching to see what came next. What if those servants had taken a time to just go, don't go in there. I know that he's called you in. I know your dad sent you in. Don't go. Don't go. Imagine if one of them was brave enough to not leave. Like, their lives were potentially at risk, I should think. But what if? What if Absalom had listened to her and let her cry? Had asked her what she wanted to do next? Like, this story has so many points at which Tamar doesn't get hurt. Their story has points where even if she got hurt, it could have been better afterwards. And they're all missed. See, justice really does need everyone. It needs everyone to know that even if they're the servant, you've got a role to play. Even if nobody knows your name, you've got a role to play. You do justice by getting involved. And so I'm going to finish by thinking about setting a different culture. We need to create a culture where everyone knows that the law is taken seriously and people know what to do when things go wrong. This comes back to safeguarding, doesn't it? But imagine if in that palace everybody knew. Because it's not that the laws weren't in place. It's not that the policy wasn't in place. It was really clear how God's people should live. And how God's people live does not involve this story. It was all there. What was missing was a culture that said, we will make sure that this is okay. What if the thing that Tamar needed was for people to look out for her. She needed to know that culture where everyone was involved, that there were going to be people who knew before she knew that there was a problem, who would step in and go, hey, watch out, careful. She needed, after the event, a safe place to go where she'd be cared for, loved, supported, and walked with on her journey to recovery. Those servants, so powerless on one level, would have had so much more power if they worked in a culture which said, your voice matters. There will not be reprisals. You whistle blow, we'll protect you. You step up for the weak, we've got your back. You stand up against a powerful abuser, we've got you. Then those servants might have felt a lot more effective. And lastly, the shame that was heaped on her head, on Tamar's head, needed to be apportioned to the right person. And we see this again and again and again. For those of us who have been hurt or sexually abused or assaulted, it's very easy to carry shame from what has been done to us. And that shame does not belong on us. It's not our shame to carry. when we hear stories about people that we've respected who might have just turned out to be somebody we never thought they were. And we want to protect them and their reputation, and we want to protect their ministry even, or their church. We begin to portion shame and blame in the wrong place. We follow a God who says he'll take our shame. He took our shame. He came down to earth and died on a cross to take it away. And that's for all of us. It's for all of us. So whoever you are this evening, and whichever of these characters you identify with, whether it's Tamar, and actually it's a bit of a relief to know that there's stories like this in the Bible. You're not an anomaly. You're seen, you're heard, you're known. Or whether you're somebody actually who goes, it might not have been my sister, but I did take what I wanted at that party. I did take what I wanted with that person. I did. It's important to take responsibility and own it, but also to know that we follow a God who has taken all of our shame, and we can take it. You can't give away what you don't own, but if we own it, we can give it to Jesus. If we own it, he'll take it, and he'll separate it from us, the Bible says, as far as the east is from the west. I'm not here to sit and put shame on your head. And if you're someone who sits and thinks, I should have stepped in, I saw that thing begin to happen and I ran the other way. That just means next time you can do it differently. Own it, recognize it, learn how to do it differently next time. Because it needs all of us to do justice, and to bring the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven. So I'm going to finish and I want to pray for you. Father God, thank you. Father God, I want to thank you that you don't shy away from these stories. You created this world in all of its beauty and perfection, and we broke it. But you stuck with us. You stuck with us, and you came down to be with us, and you love us nonetheless. Whether we're the one who's been done to, or the one who's been doing the harming, or the one who looked the other way. It blows our mind, but you love us all made in your image, all broken, all tarnished. Some of us doing a very good job of trying to hide that we're made in your image. But Jesus, would you restore us? Would you bring us back into your presence? Would you help us to walk tall, knowing who we are, knowing who you created us to be? Would you give us that strength and that ability to be more and more and more like you, leaving the old behind, stepping into what you have for us in the future, so that we can become holy like you. Amen.